know any? I mean, obviously,
Well, yeah.
Marillion
Well,
quite a lot of conventions in Montreal, and
yes, I do know that. And one of your bands record was it Edison's Children that recorded
children,
something
Edison's Children, where we recorded
in
up in
Montreal.
this one of the ski areas.
Yeah, so Montreal and
So,
Marillion is and of course with
oh
Mike
yeah,
Portnoy, the Dream Theater in Montreal is it's
yeah,
for some reason, and I've never understood this. Montreal loves progressive rock. They just
yeah.
you look
It
at
does.
Supertramp, you look at Marillion, you look at
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
but yeah, I think Quebec as well, but Montreal definitely
Well,
really embrace it. I
yeah,
think it's a kind of European thing, and the whole of the Eastern Seaboard seem to like it actually.
yeah, and it's just
You know,
it's been traditional
in the
for
yeah,
40 years. It's just Montreal or Quebec. The whole province loves this stuff. But
yeah, it does, it
well,
does. And
okay.
what a city you have, man! You have a great city.
Oh, it is I mean, listen. Right now it's under lockdown and all the whole stuff. But when it's up and kicking, it's a
Oh yeah,
vibrant city. And if you've ever been here in the summer with
yeah,
the Jazz
yeah,
Fest and the Film Fest and the Just for Laughs, it's just and the food. But we shall see how
yeah.
this pans out for 2021. But let us get started. And folks, we are talking to Pete from Transatlantic. Let's get started with this in terms of the absolute universe. Now, the concept here, I don't want to say I'm confused. I get it, but I'd rather have you further explain it. You've got one album that's two albums, or two albums that's one album. So there's the abridged version, and there's the extended version, and there's different covers for both. And by the way, I love the artwork on both of them, especially the purple one.
Yeah. It's pretty, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Explain. Is it three albums? Is it two albums? Is it one album? Please.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is quite a thing to get your head round. I mean, even we had, we had to get our heads around it, and then the record company as well. So basically, we went to Sweden with a lot of stuff pre-written by myself, Neal, and Roine, with the idea of doing an album. And we kind of decided at the time that, we wanted to work episodically. We wanted to have a continuous piece of music, much like the Whirlwind. And so we set about doing that. And we came up with all this amazing music. And, we come alive in the studio when the four of us are together. We have that thing where there's always good stuff going on. And because we already had music written, it was coming on really, really well. And we kind of, rather than deciding at some point to stop and start recording, we decided to spend the whole time arranging and demoing the thing. So we came away with basically what ended up becoming Forevermore, the extended version. And that ended up being about like 80 minutes, 90 minutes, maybe at a push. And at the time, I was already concerned about the length of it. I was saying, are we sure that, we want to spend, would it benefit? I thought it might benefit in certain areas of being edited a little bit to kind of cut to the chase here and there. But we decided to kind of go with the flow, and that's what we did. And then we came back, and Mike recorded the drums in December. I was on tour with Marillion. When I got round to working on it, and when Roine got round to working on it as well, COVID had started, and we were kind of in lockdown. And then, we all had various agendas. We all had various things that we had to do with our time as well as this album. And it became apparent while people were sending files around that rather than all working towards one greater good, we were kind of drifting away. Roine was doing stuff, and he was working on really cool ideas of what kind of became his version of the album, if you like. And Neal was doing the same. He'd rewritten lyrics. At one time, he was saying, "Well, I'm going to want to rewrite the lyrics because what we're going through this year, which was at this point was 2020, it isn't really mentioned at all, because most of the lyrical ideas were from before COVID happened. So, he said, I think I'd really like to take a bit of time to talk about this and see, and how it's affected people. And eventually, Neal went away for a while, and I was busy working on stuff, and I was putting ideas down and bits and pieces. But Roine was really coming on with what he was doing. He was layering lots of guitars and putting bass pedals and things on, and it was really building up. And Neal came back and said, I've been away for this for a while, and I think, he said, well, I've come up with a different approach. He said, and I see what you guys think. And he headed the email, Am I Crazy? And he sent through what he'd done was he'd done a very different kind of approach and edited it differently. And he'd made it shorter, but not just that. He'd taken a few bits out and I'd moved a couple of things. Like there was a theme of mine, which on Forevermore only happened at the end of the album. And I remember at the time when we were working on it, Neal was saying, "Oh, it's weird that this theme is only featured at the end of the album. That seems odd." And what he'd done is he'd done a little demo of where he thought the theme should go in the overture, and worked it up, and a few other things as well. He'd changed. He'd written a new piece of music called "Can You Feel It," and
added that,
which was new to the whole thing. So we set about sort of doing some re-recording and jigging stuff about, and at that point we really had two different ideas or two different approaches that we could either go with one or the other. It's like, well, what do we do? Do we vote for one or do we vote for the other one? And of course, being a four-piece, it's tricky when you get to decisions like that.
Yeah, the democracy splits 50-50.
Yeah, you end up with a two-way split, exactly. So Mike came up with the idea that we shouldn't make that decision. We should just go with two versions of the album. He said, this is like a big thing, and if we do it right, it could be amazing.
I gotta say, as a fan of music in general, I would love if my bands do that. I mean, can you imagine for me if Van Halen puts out two versions of 1984 or Alice Cooper, because I've heard the demo version or the alternate version, and sometimes they're just as good or better. And instead of making a decision, now the fans just go, "Hey, I got it all." So this is great.
Yeah, and eventually, I think eventually people will end up getting it all anyway, like you say. I mean, like
I'm a completist. I'm a complete completist.
Well. I think a lot of prog heads are, aren't they? I mean, I certainly was when I was a kid. The more I could get hold of, the I loved it.
Listen.
So that's basically what we did, because we had ideas, we had different approaches going on, lyrically, musically, and melody-wise. And we were in a situation where we really could, at that point when we decided, we're going to have the two versions, we could really make them different. The mixes were done separately, although all the mixing was done by Rich Mauser, who's mixed every Transatlantic album. And he does an amazing job. I mean, he really digs in. And he loves this stuff, and you can tell he's a music lover and a lover of, people playing as well. And he really did a fantastic job.
Let me ask you this, just about the sort of the two versions. If and when the time comes that you get to perform it live, which one do you choose? Do you sort of switch it up per night? Do you sort of go, version A is better than version B? Do you go, let's do a little Transatlantic fest and we'll do one night album 1 and one night version 2, and fans will come to both and love it? Like, how do you?
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of options, aren't there? There's at the moment I know Mike is kind of pushing for us to do the version on the Blu-ray, which I haven't come to yet, but on the Blu-ray there's a 5.1 mix, and that is kind of like Mike's favorite moments of both versions. And that runs at 100 minutes. So you've got Neal, you've got The Breath of Life, which is 60 minutes.
Yeah.
and has very different music in various parts and places, to Forevermore, which is the extended version, and that runs at about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And then 100 minutes is the 5.1 Blu-ray, which also has a visualizer kind of video that runs along the whole of it as well. And people have probably seen the trailers for the songs, and that's the kind of it's slightly in a cartoon, not magical, but Yellow Submarine kind of vibe to it.
I love
it.
Well, and, let me ask you about this, because I'm just looking at the description. You've got the CD digipack, the gatefold LPs. You've got the 3 LP 2 CD box set. You've got the clear, the Blu-ray box set, the 16-page booklet. As somebody who is a longtime rock fan, I believe you need to own music. This whole idea of I'm just going to go click a button is nice, I think, to preview something, but I don't think, if you can't see behind me right now, but I've got a pile of CDs basically up to the ceiling. I think that what the band has done here, you've made it really exciting and almost impossible for anybody to go enjoy this on Spotify. They're going to have that book. How important is that to have something to give the fans and say, yeah, you know what, Spotify's cute, but you got to touch this booklet. You got to have the 16 pages. You got to have the physical to get the whole thing.
I think you just miss so much of the experience that I had when I was growing up.
Absolutely.
It was all records. It was gatefolds. It was, and I would sit up there. I'd put a record on at night, and I would sit up in my room.
And I'd stare at that.
Read all the lyrics and read all of the information. I knew who played what on every album. I knew who made the tea.
No, let me rephrase that. You knew who the record
involved.
Company wanted you to know who played on those records. There's a lot of those ghost musicians. But
oh, for sure. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. No, I know. There's a lot of that.
No, but it is part of the experience, though.
For an awful lot of people.
Yes.
Before he became a singer.
Yeah, but it is part of the experience, though. I mean, holding it and doing the lyrics and I just love the fact that you made this very, very sort of fan-friendly, and I think that's a great approach. And I just I'll just extend it into Marillion for a second. You've always been very fan-friendly. You did the crowdfunding in the early days where you said, hey, we're all in this together. I mean, way before any other band ever thought of it.
Yeah, we actually did invent crowdfunding. Although it kind of came to us earlier on. But we just embraced it.
Well,
and then started.
And you do those fan festivals. I mean, how? This is going to be a really silly question, but how important is the fan in the process of this band, and to treat them with respect? Because sometimes I find that bands just go, "We're the band, come to the mountain," and I don't get that from Transatlantic. I don't get that from any band that Portnoy's in or yourself. How important is the fan?
The fans are huge. I mean, the fans mean everything to. I think in progressive music, probably more so than mainstream commercial music, whatever that is anymore. I don't even know. The fans are everything, because without them, there's very limited. It's very limited what you can do, and to get a record company to embrace what you do, they need to be able to rely on the fact that you've got a fan base to an extent. But that's not it. The fans really, we found with Marillion that the more you and Transatlantic as well, the more you embrace the fans and it just becomes a much bigger thing.
Yeah. You invest in them and they invest in you, which is what it's supposed to be.
Huge. And there's a huge amount of faith, especially when people are pre-ordering, albums these days. There's a huge amount of faith, just because they don't know what they're getting when they hit that button. And some of this stuff, you get beautiful packaging, but beautiful packaging doesn't always come cheap.
No, it doesn't. Listen,
And that's
I've got stuff
and
from
so
Thunder and
I
FM
think
pre-ordered into April, so I'm all about it.
yeah, no, exactly, and I think a lot of people are, and a lot of people that can afford that. It's great that they can, and it's great that they do. I mean, because if you think about how music is so important in our lives, it really is. I mean, massively. There's a whole thing at the moment in Europe and particularly in England where artists and
Oh, artists in Europe are getting beaten down.
just
That
they're
new
just not
streaming.
getting.
What was that new
Yeah.
streaming the tax they want to put or whatever performance fee? And it's just like, really, you're gonna tax somebody who's doing a stream
Well,
like bugger off.
that's well. There's two schools of thought with that. Basically, it's a PRS license. Now, what the PRS license allows you to do, or what that allows for the songwriter, is that when somebody does a concert, wherever it is, and if they get paid for it, then they have to buy the license, and then the songwriters get paid eventually.
See, that's left out. That's
trickles
left
down.
out of the media, the little media blast that you read in the Guardian or
But
whatever.
there is an awful lot. Yeah, there's an awful lot of issues because during this pandemic, all of a sudden, a whole swathe of people can't work, and they've just gone from having incomes and a schedule of a year's work to nothing overnight, and they're not being supported by the government in the UK.
Well, they're not being supported
so
by governments around the world. Listen, I
Yeah,
was talking to somebody this morning who was a roadie, and she's female,
yeah,
and she's had to open up an OnlyFans, one of those, show me your boobie kind of things, and it's just like, wow, that's incredible that you're going to have to lose your house if you don't do this because there's no place for you to go practice your trade, and it's
yeah.
you know,
They're not just like people just lugging stuff around. These are highly professional, technical people. They're technicians. They work on computerized equipment, be it lights, be it sound. It's all computerized these days.
and they make a
And
difference. If you have a
they
shitty
have to
road
know
crew,
how
you
to
have a shitty
set
show.
it up. Yeah, they have to know how to set it up, how to fix it, how to make it work every night so everything's great. There's a lot of money invested in all of that stuff, and buses and trucks, and they're all kind of missing out. But we're getting away. From
Yeah, we're getting
subject
away.
now.
Let me get back to Transatlantic here.
Yeah.
On average, if you sort of work it out, an album comes out every 7-8 years on average. I mean, the first two were a year apart. How do you know, or how do you decide that now is the time for Transatlantic? And because, I mean, yes, you have your schedule, and then it's Sons of Apollo and Dream Theater, or used to be Dream Theater. But other than sort of scheduling, how do you sort of say, yeah, now's the time for this?
Yeah. How do we do it? I don't really know. We just get together and talk about it, and sometimes it feels right, and sometimes it kind of doesn't. And a lot of it is down to schedules. It really is. I mean, we were talking for about 3 years before this album was able to get itself together. What we actually did, we kind of, we did a couple of cruises to the edges and did bits and pieces on them, and all our, respective bands were on the cruises. So we got to talking about, well, do we want to do another Transatlantic album? And the answer was yes. But it took us another 2 years before we could find a date. So we just punched. It's like everybody had full calendars for like 18 months. So we said, look, 2019, middle of 2019, no one's got anything in their calendar. So let's go there and see whereabouts within that 6 month time frame we can work. And it ended up being September. And so that's what we did. And of course, at the time, we all thought we'd take the record away, work on it frantically with a release date, and everybody around doing the touring and the recording they're doing with other bands would find time to do a tour. But because that all went out the window and we were all in lockdown, I think that allowed us to kind of fiddle with it and work on it. And it's the longest we've ever worked on anything. I mean, most of the time, Transatlantic's lucky if it gets 5 to 10 days is a luxury for Transatlantic. So to have all this time to discuss things and come up with strategies and, really make the music what it is. And everyone's playing out of their skin on this album.
Yeah. Listen, I've had a chance to hear it. It sounds great.
It just really is a tremendous effort. And it's a huge project. I mean, I think I'm really proud with it. I'm really...
Well, you should be. It sounds great. Let me ask you this: in terms of you're in Marillion. You've done the Edison's Children. You've done Transatlantic.
I've done Kino as well. Actually,
yeah,
John
absolutely.
And John Beck from It Bites. If you ever got round to listening to them.
Yes, I did. The Kino is and there was another couple there. But let me just ask you: how do you like? What kind of thrill do you get from being in these different bands? And maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, but what does each band bring to you? Because is it exactly the same kick? You're just playing and that's it, or do they bring something different musically? How do you sort of?
Yeah, there's different skills with each one,
right.
in a strange kind of way. I mean, I guess Kino or Transatlantic is unique because it's kind of like I mean, when I'm thinking of live now, when we go out live, it's like a show band in a strange kind of way. We're all playing to kind of be, noticed.
Right.
And a lot of the music is fast and furious, so it suits that kind of thing. It's a full-on show. It's a long show normally as well, a very long show. There's a lot of artistry and there's a lot of musicianship thing going on, and everybody has to be on their toes as well. Actually, with Transatlantic, I mean that's the thing. It's work. I mean, there's a lot of work involved for me because you don't have a second to think. Everything just has to be at your fingertips. Whereas in a lot of the other stuff I do, there's a bit more time involved.
Right. But do you adjust your playing for each band, or Pete plays Pete?
Yeah,
and,
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a core element of what I do in everything I do. And I tend to be melodic. I'm a melodic player. I grew up listening to McCartney and, a few other people. He was my first kind of bass hero. And if you those Beatles albums, the bass playing, considering what a lot of players were doing at the time, I mean, it was tremendous stuff. And then I very quickly got onto bands like Caravan. Actually, I really got into Caravan, and then Yes and Genesis and Camel. I used to go and see Camel live quite a lot at one point, and
wow.
And then I got into Todd Rundgren actually, and Utopia as well, and Kazim Sultan.
Kasim, he's amazing. By the way,
Kazim. Yeah, sorry.
I know we're not here to talk about Todd, but he's doing something this month in February that's fascinating. He's doing a virtual tour where he is going to do a different show in each city, but they're all virtual. So, but he's got he's got an actually 25 dates, and it's like tonight is Buffalo. Tonight, it's the most. I don't even know. I mean, it's either bizarre or it's pure genius, but it's just fascinating.
Well, he's a creative guy, isn't he? I mean, he does think he thinks out of the box. He always did,
Yeah.
We were lucky enough with Marillion to support Todd Rundgren actually, or Todd Rundgren and Utopia when round about the Bang the Drum time.
Yeah, long time ago.
It was awesome, being back after, because we'd do our little show and then we'd all sit back and just be watching, and there'd be stuff from Ra and the playing and the sound. Obviously the sound was pretty good because Todd was kind of all over that. So yeah.
Let me just ask you quickly about the album again, The Absolute Universe.
Yes. Sorry.
When you're making new music, do you think at all about how it has to be commercially successful? I mean, there are artists that write singles for the radio, and yes, Marillion had one of the greatest singles ever, but I don't see you as being a radio band per se. So what makes it successful? And do you say, okay, a prog album needs these elements? How do you approach it, or you just go, we do what we do?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. We do what we do. I mean, it's interesting. It's a funny old thing, Transatlantic, because with the experience that we have, I mean, we all have a lot of experience writing and recording, but also the experiences we have with each other, because we've toured a lot, we've made a lot of albums together now, and it's crucially, I think it's the touring side of it, because when you're on stage together, sometimes you really have to work for a song to come across to an audience, and you have to find what it is the audience want out of the song, and that can sometimes be different things from night to night. Especially when you're going through different countries and different continents, they want a different experience they might want a different thing in Belgium to what they want in Baltimore. They're different.
Well, we know what we want. We know what we want in Montreal. We want our Marillion weekends, which are
I know
always an event.
So that all comes to play when we kind of thinking about writing and recording. But there's nothing like it's weird. We have the sound. We've kind of got a transatlantic sound. We've even got a transatlantic identity as well. But when this time in the studio, it was a lot of fun, and it was quite light-hearted to start with. But once we say, okay, let's work on this 5 minutes of music, and we'll do this theme, and then we'll go into this verse, and we'll go into this chorus. So we might be doing like a verse of, a theme of Roine as into a verse of kind of mine that Neal would sing on, because he's got some lyrics to go with it, and then a chorus of Neal's, and we just start playing it, and it just sounds like Transatlantic. It's like
it does.
The four of us make that sound.
Let me
and it's almost like, well, we know what to do without somebody telling you. Like, no, but make it more Transatlantic. But we can't make it any less. Is the truth.
Let me wrap up with these two questions here. In terms of, it sounded to me like you were very creative this time out. You've got two versions of the album, and there's all kinds of this should go here and that should go there. Do you see yourself maybe releasing an album in a shorter time span, whereas maybe in 2022, 2023, we're talking again, just because it's been such a productive, 12 months? Or is it still, no, we'll get back to this in 6-7 years. We always do these, because it just sounds to me like the band was in a zone. You seem to have been super creative.
It was in a zone, yeah. Who knows? I mean, I could sit here and say one thing and something else might happen completely. But I would suspect not. I think from a practical point of view and a commercial point of view, I think as soon as we're able to have concerts again, there's going to be hundreds of concerts that had to be cancelled, some of which we were involved in, I'm sure, as members of other bands, where they're just all of that's going to have to be honoured, as well as every band that's on the planet is going to want to go back out and tour, because they spent a year not doing it.
Which, by the way, in itself,
quite often coming up being very productive musically without the touring, actually.
Yes,
but some fascinating covers and some fascinating kind of combinations of people working together.
Oh, it really is. And I was just going to say, the whole idea of everybody being on tour at the same time sounds great, but it also might be a disaster in the sense that there's going to be too many bands competing for the fans' dollar. And they're talking about 80% of the venues closing, and it's like, oh boy, it's going to be.
I know it's going to be hard to find find venues. I think.
Yeah.
And it's also, and the worst thing about it, and I really hope it doesn't happen, is that usually when venues have to close, and really stuff that's been run by people who just love what they do and love music. The big corporate body comes along and says, "Oh, we can open this, and we can find a way to make money out of this," and then it suddenly goes the way of all the other.
Yep, it becomes real sterile
buildings, like all the Clear Channel stuff, and we have companies in the UK and in Europe that do the same thing, and they kind of sanitize it all, and they make it too expensive for bands to make any profit as well. Because there's a tax on this and a tax on that, and you can't, if you want to take pictures, that's more, and if you want to make a film, that's even more, and if you want to sell T-shirts, you'll have to give us 50% of that.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff goes on in the
Oh,
background.
oh,
And of
I
course,
know.
fans shouldn't be worried about all of that because they should be just there to enjoy themselves. But but first off,
Well,
we'll have to see how many venues are open and how many bands can actually find one.
yeah, and by the way, will there be promoters that have money to pay the fees or the guarantees and stuff? Because a lot of the promoters have, they've had a year and a half of zero.
Yeah, they have. And of course, there's been lots of deferrals. I'm sure, I know that in the UK, and I'm sure governments around the world have been saying, oh, well, landlords can't charge rent at the moment because properties aren't making any money. But they're all going to want their money back as soon as there's there's a few dollars in an account. It'd be like, oh, well, that's ours first, actually. I think you'll find.
It's gonna be anyway. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll cross that bridge. We'll cross that transatlantic bridge when we get to it. But let me just finish on this here. And you've been asked about this a million times, I know. But the single Kayleigh, was that an unexpected thing that it sort of blew up and became #1 in Poland and #2 in the UK and because Marillion wasn't meant to be a radio band.
No, we never were. We never saw ourselves as a radio band. And I think I think EMI didn't know what to do with us. EMI signed us because we were like playing Reading Festival and on the radio and selling out clubs in London. We could do 4 or 5 nights at the Marquee, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, and there was 2 or 3 record labels just thinking, well, as an audience, someone can sell something to that audience. So we ended up on EMI, and for the first album was quite successful. It sold what they hoped. I think it oversold. The second album, not so. And the third album, Misplaced Childhood, they sent us to Berlin because it was cheap. It was a really cheap studio. And they got Chris Kimsey. Chris Kimsey had just finished doing sort of like 15 years work with the Rolling Stones. So he was trying to build up his name again.
Yeah.
So he'd just done Killing Joke in Berlin. And he said, well, I can do an album for you for this much money delivered. I can deliver you an album. And so we went to Berlin together. But the writing of Misplaced was a lot easier than the writing for Fugazi, because it's the first time. Fugazi was really the first time we had to write an album, because as bands develop over the years and band members come and band members go, music, they end up with like 5 or 6 years worth of music that they can pick the best songs for their first album. For the second album, they've just been on tour, and all of a sudden it's like, you've got to write another album, and they don't know how to do that. And that's why there's always that second album thing going on. And by the third album, we'd worked out how to do it. We'd learned, what we were comfortable working on and how we were comfortable working. And Kayleigh was just a part of a whole thing. Misplaced Childhood was a concept, really. It was a concept album around about the same time as Punk. So everyone was scratching their heads going, what's going on here? And EMI were like, what have you delivered?
Well, because it was fascinating,
Chris Kimsey said, look, let me go back with Kayleigh. I can make this into a single for you. So he did. He kind of edited it in such a way. It's not a classic song.
Well, no, but it was fascinating because
one chorus and a key change.
Yeah. No, because I remember, you would look at TV back then, Much Music in Canada, MTV in the States, and, English Beat and Bananarama and Madonna and the early metal stuff, Scorpions Rock You Like a Hurricane. And then the video for Kayleigh would come on and you'd go, oh, well, that's a change. And yet it worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did.
It was weird as well, because we were on all of these different festivals. And then we were like featured in Kerrang as well, because EMI had kind of put us under this band's not a pop band, so it must be a rock band. So they kind of marketed us like Iron Maiden, because they knew how to market Iron Maiden. So it's like, we'll give you a logo and we'll give you you've got a jester, so that's your dude, and that's how we were marketed. And so Kerrang and all of these heavy metal kind of magazines had us on the front cover and stuff, and so we would be playing on these festivals, and there'd be all of these rock, heavy bands and a rock band, and then in the middle of the afternoon there'd be us, and we were like much more, much more progressive, much more like
it's just amazing the definition of heavy metal back in the 80s. You went from Poison to Jethro Tull to
oh, I know. Yeah, there was a lot of it, and in fact, I mean, a lot of the rock music and the early metal music came from blues, really, more than anything else.
Yeah, it's just heavier blues.
And that was Deep Purple, really. Deep Purple and Black Sabbath kind of created that kind of sound.
Yeah, it's just funny to think that, for a period there, people were like, Marillion's heavy metal. And it's like, no, I really don't think so, quite frankly.
No, I know. It's like, we're really not. But then I just thought of us, it's funny because we had those moments. I've always wondered how progressive we are as well, because we have those moments. But we also, there's a lot of bits that are a kind of like, a nod to Led Zeppelin as well. When Led Zeppelin were a more, acoustic or more laid back than the heavy stuff they did.
Well, listen, it all worked out anyway. The Absolute Universe, out February 5th, so coming up in a couple of days. Pete, absolute pleasure, and let's hope that you get back to Montreal. The city loves you. The Marillion Fest is always fascinating.
And we had a whole plan, which we've had to tear down and try and rebuild and then tear down again. So it's on the cards. Montreal is on the cards. When we do it, it's kind of a lap of the gods, isn't it? Yeah,
well, right now we're under full lockdown with a curfew. We have to be in bed or we have to be at home by 8 o'clock at night. So
yeah, we're on a lockdown, and certain areas of the country, the police will arrest you.
Oh, here they'll fine you $1,500.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Stay home.
Wow.
But hey, listen, it's February in Montreal, so 8 o'clock at night, probably a good time to stay home. It's dark and minus 20.
It is. It's still pretty cold up there, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was minus 16 yesterday, so you know what? I don't need to be walking around at 9 o'clock at night at minus 16 in February.
No, you don't.
Lockdown in July, I might have a problem. February, it's fine.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir. Great pleasure
Mitch,
today.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Absolutely. And let's do it again when whatever comes out, whether it's Edison's Children, whether it's Kino, whether it's Transatlantic. Let's stay in touch and do some more.
We should. I will.
Merci bien.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.